Good morning, everyone. Please join us as we sing our opening song, 1000, in your book, if you're using your book. Morning has come. Morning has come, arise and greet the day. Dance with joy and sing a song of gladness. The light of hope here shine upon its face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. A new day dawns, once more the gift is given. Wonder fills this moment shared together. The light of peace here shines upon its face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. Open our eyes to see that life abounds. Open us to welcome it among us. The light of love here shines upon its face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Whether you're here in person, joining us online, or watching later on YouTube, welcome to First Parish in Concord. I'm Reverend Seth Carrier-Ladd, your interim senior minister. My pronouns are he, him. If you're online, please feel welcome to participate fully in the chat. If you're here in person and have questions about accessibility or the building, please see our ushers or any worship leader. Masks are optional throughout our building, including in this space. We continue to use enhanced ventilation and encourage masking to keep our communal spaces safe for everyone. I invite everyone present now to wave to those folks who are joining us online back there. However you are joining us this morning, thank you for coming. We're glad you're here. We have some announcements this morning. After the service, there's the Worship Sharing Circle, small group conversation about the service theme in the Brooks Room in person and on Zoom. We also have Coffee Hour, a less structured way to connect. On Zoom, you just stay on after the service. In person, you can get your coffee in the kitchen and mingle in the parish hall. Some other announcements, not just about today. 20 years ago, after brainstorming with Jenny Rankin, First Parishioners created a new social action platform called the Jericho Road Project. When Gary Smith asked parishioners about volunteering to assist Lowell nonprofit organizations, 325 responded. By 2005, more than 100 FPers had provided more than 4,000 hours of professional time to 150 Lowell organizations. The idea spread fast to Jericho Road projects from Roxbury and Andover to Texas and California, with staff funded by UUA grants and from the Greeley and other private foundations. The cumulative impact provided 50,000 hours at a value of more than $5 million. To celebrate this history as the organization is winding down and meet the 3 organizations that will carry on the legacy using the remaining financial assets, you are invited to the Parish Hall this Tuesday from 5 to 6:30 p.m. To help with food planning, please RSVP to Eric Van Loon. Where is Eric? Eric's right there, and he'll be in coffee hour after the service. Please RSVP to Eric if you can come. Also, next Sunday, December 17th, plan to stay after the service and hear members of the search committee share what they heard in all the listening sessions they conducted and from the congregation-wide survey. And finally, mark your calendars for Saturday, January 27th, when Reverend Paul Langston Daly will offer a workshop for addressing conflict in healthy ways. Why not turn that off? For addressing conflict in healthy ways. This workshop is a direct follow-up to the work of creating a congregational covenant that we did last spring. I encourage everyone to attend. That's Saturday, January 27th. Check out your Sunday announcements sheets as well for more announcements, as there is even more than that and a lot going on. Before we sing our opening hymn, though, we have one more special announcement from Carol Harris. Carol?
Good morning. Brought a few friends. I am here to thank everyone who is signed up for the Children's Craft Workshop. It will be next Saturday, the 16th, from 12 to 3. There are still lots of space for more people to help out if anyone is looking for a way to get involved. And I am also here to remind all of you to bring your kids, your grandkids, your neighbors who have been dying to know what we do at First Parish and want to connect. These are a few of the crafts. There are many, many, many crafts. We're doing painted bags again this year. These are little candle motifs. There's all sorts of things. There will be jewelry. There will be cookies. Lots of ways to get involved. Lots of things for the kids to do. So I hope everybody can make it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And now let's rise in body or spirit as we sing our opening hymn, number 145, As Tranquil Streams.
Each Sunday, we light our chalice to set aside this time of worship together and to connect to our larger Unitarian Universalist faith. As the days grow shorter, we light more candles. Last night, the third night of Hanukkah, Jewish households lit 3 candles on the menorah. And today is the second Sunday in the season of Advent, the 4 weeks in the Christian liturgical year of waiting and preparing for Christmas and the hope experienced in the birth of Jesus. Last week, we began this season by lighting a candle of love. In her beautiful book, All Creation Waits, The Advent Mystery of New Beginnings, writer Gail Boss reminds us that the roots of Advent run deep beneath the Christian church, in the earth and in its seasons. Late autumn in the northern hemisphere brings the end of the growing season, when early agricultural peoples had harvested their crops, stacked their food in their larders, and gave a collective sigh of relief. Their long days in the fields were over. But at the same time, they couldn't help glancing at the sky. The growing season was over because the sun had retreated too far south to keep the crops alive. Each day through the fall, they watched the light dwindle, the warmth weaken. Advent to early church leaders was the right naming of a season when light and life are fading. They urged the faithful to set aside 4 weeks to fast, give, and pray, to let the bared soul recall what it knows beneath its fear of the dark. That there is one who is the source of all life, one who comes to be with us in and even especially in darkness and death, one who brings a new beginning. So in this spirit, we light our second Advent candle as a candle of hope. Please join me in the response in your order of service and on the screen. I will light candles this season, candles of joy despite all sadness, candles of hope where despair keeps watch, candles of courage for fears ever present, candles of peace for tempest-tossed days, candles of grace to ease heavy burdens, candles of love to inspire all my living, candles that will burn all the year long.
Candles, so many candles. How many here also celebrate Hanukkah at your home, either because you have Jewish heritage or your partner does? Some of us do celebrate Hanukkah as well. And it's always confusing exactly when Hanukkah begins because it follows the Jewish calendar, and so it's not quite the same calendar as when we celebrate Christmas. Sometimes it's near Christmas, and sometimes, like this year, it has a little room, a little space from Christmas. As Beth mentioned, we've just celebrated the third night of Hanukkah, and tonight will be the fourth. I want to point out this beautiful menorah, or Hanukkiah, which was loaned to us by Paula Adelson, who is part of our choir, and each year she brings it here to share with us because it was crafted by her husband, who is now deceased. And one of the things that's fascinating about the celebration of Hanukkah, which is a minor Jewish holiday, is that these Hanukkiah that are in our homes can look so different. I've seen ones that have ballet dancers on it, or soccer balls, or they can be quite fanciful, or they can be quite artistic, like this one. And you notice there's one candle that is higher than the rest, and that is the one thing that is similar of all the menorah or Hanukkiah that you see. And that is because that is the shamash, or servant candle, that lights all of the other candles, which I always think is very special, that we share our light. And as we share our light, it grows. But I want to share this morning a wisdom story from the Jewish tradition. As many of you know, there is a Jewish scripture called the Talmud. And in the Talmud, there are many stories about custom and about what is the proper way to do things. And as you know, just like Unitarian Universalist Jews like to discuss. And they are not shy about asking questions and about having strong opinions. And so this particular argument that's set down in the Talmud actually goes back to the 1st century. And there are two scholars that are having an argument. One scholar's name is Shammai, and the other is Hillel. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with the name Hillel. You see many places and colleges and dedicated to Hillel. Now, Shammai thought, they were discussing how should the Hanukkiah be lit. And Shammai made the case that we should start on the first night with all of the 8 candles lit. And on the following night, you would diminish 1 candle and so on, because even though that small jar of oil that was discovered in the temple miraculously lasted for 8 nights, most likely the light would have diminished over time. And so therefore that would be the more historically accurate way of celebrating the holiday. But Hillel argued instead, we should light 1 candle on the first night, 2 on the second, 3 on the third, and so on. So on the final night of Hanukkah, there would be a glow of candles. Why do you think he felt that was the way it should be observed? Does anyone have an idea? Yes. The miracle was more amazing as the nights went on. Thank you so much. So although the light itself might have been growing dimmer, the miracle itself caused something miraculous to glow within the people. So, of course, we know that Hillel won the argument. That is the custom that many of us practice. Increasing the light, adding to holiness, remembering not the historical events, but the sacred meaning, growing light in the darkness. And just like Beth said in the beginning of our service, many religious traditions light candles, and especially in this time when it is cold and dark, it reminds us of ancient customs, the love of family and community, and the sacred flame of life, which is within each of us also. And so whether or not your family celebrates Hanukkah, I hope that you will find ways to have meaningful celebrations in your home, to light a candle, to take a moment with that miraculous flame and let it glow inside of your heart as well. These days, we are very mindful of the places in the world that are in conflict. And although the Hanukkah celebrates the rededication of the temple, and it also celebrates a military victory, the spirit of Unitarian Universalism calls on each one of us to celebrate the light and rededicate ourselves to the overcoming of destruction and chaos. Today, our junior youth group is actually down in the kitchen making latkes. And if they come out in time for coffee hour, that will be a miracle. But they're probably going to eat them themselves, so don't get your hopes up too much. The rest of our children are going up to the Emerson room to learn some songs with Anderson as we get ready for our pageant next week and Christmas Eve, because we are a multi-faith congregation. I want to invite all of the RE guides and all the children to come forward. And if you're up on the balcony, you can meet us in the Emerson room. You can just go around that way. And let's join together in singing our children off to their program.
Justice Task Force, and I want to talk to you about KIND, which is our Share the Plate recipient today. There they are. Most of you know that since November 2021, we have supported in various ways 3 families that were evacuated from Kabul. We first met those families at the Manchester airport at 1 a.m. on the Monday of Thanksgiving week in 2021. And among the 12 people that we picked up at that time, there were 3 cousins, unaccompanied minors, Zubair, Emran, and Sahil. The names are easy for me now, but I struggled at the time. They were young. They were 16 years old. Parents and family were back in Afghanistan. We fortunately had Tony Rodriguez, who was a longtime volunteer with KIND, Kids in Need of Defense. Their work is to provide legal assistance, free legal assistance to unaccompanied minors. They recruit and train pro bono lawyers. And Tony, a longtime volunteer with KIND, asked them to take on the cases of the 3 lads, as I call them. And they were soon matched with lawyers and are working their way through the Byzantine and complicated process of applying for asylum, with their lawyers helping them every step of the way with the mountains of paperwork, applications, etc. We were lucky to have Tony make that request. I'm not sure that they would have refused him anything. He had provided countless hours of translation, accompaniment to court cases, checking in on kids to make sure they were going to school. And in fact, a few years ago, there was a volunteer award named after him, which is given annually. So we have Tony's connection with KIND. Janet Donovan is on the advisory committee, and Emran, Sahil, and Zubair are still working to get asylum so that they can remain protected in the United States. Next Sunday, you will have the chance to talk with and meet Emran, because he'll be up here telling you a little bit about what he's been going through as he, with KIND's help, applies for asylum. So please remember KIND in your offering. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. We will now receive this morning's offering. Please give generously.
Thank you, Eric and Nancy. For the last month, our congregation has been engaged together in a four-part series of services exploring the words that we have come to call our First Parish benediction. If you were here for the first service of the series, or if you have read the short history posted online, you'll recall that these words are rooted in ancient letters of the Apostle Paul to the early Christian community in Thessalonica. Paul's words of counsel were adapted in the 20th century and published in the Presbyterian Book of Common Worship as a charge or a benediction. And it went like this: Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return no one evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak and help the suffering. Honor all people. Love and serve the Lord, rejoicing in the power of the Holy Spirit. Reverend Gary Smith, our minister emeritus, served as senior minister here from 1988 to 2011. And his first congregation was the First Church in Middletown, Connecticut, a UCC congregation. Gary thinks he learned this benediction in Middletown from his colleague there, who was a Presbyterian minister. When Gary came to Concord in 1988, he began to use an adapted version of the benediction at the end of services, ending with honor all people. Gary noticed after a while that people were saying it along with him, and gradually, after a while, the congregation took this benediction to be its own. These words became our words. We brought this benediction into our homes and workplaces. One of you said, I needed this at work today to help me practice what I believe. Return to no person evil for evil. Families have scribed the benediction on their driveway so their children would read it as they went out into the world on the first day of school. We have translated into Hungarian for our partner congregation and Spanish for youth trips to El Salvador. During the 1990s, a large church consultant from the UUA referred to the benediction as our mission statement. Many of us and our children know it by heart. And we have continued to adapt it over time. C.C. King, in fact, is credited with suggesting that we change honor all people to honor all beings, which is more in keeping with the Unitarian Universalist seventh principle. In 2001, when we celebrated the 100th anniversary of this meeting house, I composed a musical setting of the words. And Brian Schmidt, a parishioner who was a regular at Rise Up Singing, our monthly folk song circle, adapted the text to be sung to the tune of Greensleeves. So even folks who are not members of First Parish sing this song together at the end of each Rise Up Singing session. It is a way that they have come to understand who we are and how we want to be in the world. The benediction has been part of First Parish for the last 35 of our 387 years as a congregation, weaving its way organically into our worship and into our lives, and adapting along with us to changing and challenging times, while still remaining rooted in ancient tradition.
Self-evaluation and critique is a key part of any practice of theological self-reflection. And this is important because there are things we understand to be true today that later generations will consider wrong. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with us, it's just how the world works. Our understanding of what's okay and not okay, what's moral and immoral, evolves over time. We Unitarian Universalists, while often at the leading edge of the evolution and change process, are not immune from this challenge of needing to change. Exactly 100 years ago in 1923, the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Muncie, Indiana, forced their minister to leave because he came out in opposition to the Ku Klux Klan. Yes, you heard me right. They forced him out because he opposed the KKK. Fortunately, the good Universalists of Muncie continue to self-reflect and self-critique, and I am happy to report that the Unitarian Universalist Church of Muncie is now proudly anti-racist. Our willingness to be self-critical and to converse and reflect and revise is one of the biggest strengths of Unitarian Universalism. This has been true for a long time. For a paper in my Unitarian Universalist history class in seminary, I went back and read every tract. A tract is what we would call a pamphlet in modern terms. So I went back and read every tract published by the American Unitarian Association from its founding after the Unitarian controversy in 1825 through to the merger with the Universalists in 1961. It was a fascinating study in evolution, as the first set of tracts, published in 1831, clearly endorsed the Christian tradition, grounded, quote, devoutly in the truth of the Bible and adoring a superintending providence. It wasn't until 1890 that opposition to having to state a creed to join the church shows up, and not until 1940 does there stop being an explicit statement of belief in God. The tracts showed a gradual evolution away from a denomination focused on Christianity, God, and Jesus, and towards one focused on humanism and freedom of belief. We are where we are here today as Unitarian Universalists because our forebears were constantly disagreeing and debating and occasionally arguing about what it meant to be a Unitarian, a Universalist, and a Unitarian Universalist. And because they were willing to learn, grow, and change. We are still practicing this process of reflection, critique, and discernment today. In fact, it is embedded into the Unitarian Universalist Association bylaws. When the 7, now 8, principles were adopted after years and decades of debate, there was intense concern that they not become a creed or something that is idolized and unchangeable. And so it is written into our national bylaws that every 15 years the principles must be reconsidered to see if there are any modifications we want to make to them. Now, the last time we tried this process of review, we failed to vote in the affirmative to even discuss the proposed changes. That's right, we voted down the chance to even talk about making change. This time, with the proposed revisions to Article 2 that are happening now, we voted last year to have a conversation at least, as we move towards voting on whether to adopt the proposed revisions at this year's General Assembly. And so it is then, with this history of our faith tradition in mind, and the history and evolution of the benediction that Beth shared in mind, and after lifting up and celebrating the benediction in 3 separate Sunday services, that we come to this point this morning of self-reflection and critique of the benediction. Now let's be clear, self-reflection and self-critique is not all negative. It's about asking the questions. The goal is not to tear the object of your critical lens apart. It's to honestly evaluate what works and what doesn't. The end result of self-reflection and critique can be, we like what we have just the way it is. And so it is that I began by asking you all the question, what do you most appreciate about the benediction? You shared many things in response. Here are a few representative examples. The first parish benediction has been my constant, my touchstone for the past 35 years. It hangs by my kitchen door for me to see as I leave and return home each day. Someone else said, it reminds me to return to the world and try to be the best version of myself. To be peaceful, not angry with those who have different options. To be supportive of people going through difficult times. To stand beside those who are being bullied and oppressed. To treat everyone with respect and honor. Another person said, it inspires me to be the best person I can be every day. And one more example. The way it stays with me and guides my actions during the week is what I most appreciate. The way it comes to mind when I'm feeling weak or needing strength and guidance. The practice of saying the benediction out loud together every Sunday and at the end of many church group meetings. I feel a sense of connection and purpose as we go out together into the world. Hey, sorry, I get distracted. Can we take down the current benediction? It doesn't need to be, thank you. It doesn't need to be up this whole time. Appreciate it. We'll get there. We're gonna pop it up, but it doesn't need to be on the screen the whole time. I know, some of you have said the words are distracting, right, when you see them up there. Okay. So, that was what you all said, and I agree with all of what you have shared. I see the powerful and important messages the benediction offers about how to live our lives. I hear how its ritual repetition and presence in your lives has become a deeply meaningful touchstone. And after reading all of your messages and responses during this sermon series, I understand more deeply now, on a visceral level, how important the benediction is to you, the members and friends of First Parish. The next step is to reflect on what we might wish were different. And so I asked you all, what, if anything, do you wish were different about the benediction? A number of you said nothing, or some version of, I like it the way it is. One of you said, the strengthen and support and helpline seem somewhat repetitive and redundant. Maybe eliminate one or otherwise combine. Another person said, the last line should read, love the earth in all of its beings. One of you shared, the current wording seems more than a bit appropriate for a group of predominantly privileged European Americans who can be seen as our being some kind of beneficial know-it-alls, has-it-alls, that can save the others and bring them into our vision of the world. Another shared, the three exhortations to serve others seem to suggest we hold a position of superiority and imply that we are never ourselves among the faint-hearted, the weak, or the suffering. And finally, one more sharing. Another person wrote, in my mind, Paul's letter to the Thessalonians upon further reflection, and I say this as someone with Christian, even Catholic leanings, focuses a bit too much on the battle against evil, or subordination or obedience, or who should be chastised, or generally how a good Christian should behave. So first, I'll remind you that all of those were your words, not my words. And second, I'll share with you that the people who offered some of the more pointed critiques, without fail, also paired their critique with deep appreciation for the benediction. They weren't just hating on it. Third, I'll note that as you know if you were here on the second Sunday in this series, I share the concern about the language and strengthen the faint-hearted, support the weak, help the suffering. Here's what I said in that sermon. The words faint-hearted and weak feel judgmental. Faint-hearted and weak are not words that I would use in a blessing, which is what a benediction is supposed to be, a blessing to close a religious service. If I were to say to you, Jane is faint-hearted and weak, you wouldn't think I was being kind. You'd probably think I was being a little mean. I'll add today that I have further concerns about the word strengthen and strengthen the faint-hearted. It doesn't say, offer your strength to the faint-hearted. It says to strengthen them. In other words, change, improve, fix those people who need it. The word strengthen to me feels like it has some condescending or paternalistic energy. More broadly, I wish the tone, tenor, and focus of the benediction were softer, included more internal reflection, and were more communal. The benediction also feels very outwardly and behaviorally focused to me. Now, there's nothing wrong with looking outward. In fact, it's one of the vitally important things religion encourages us, reminds us, and challenges us to do, to think about and care for other people, not just ourselves. To have the benediction primarily focus on the outward, though, feels like it's leaving out the inner work. Which is a great transition into our next question for reflection. What, if anything, is missing? That was the final question I asked you. What, if anything, do you think is missing from the first parish benediction? Again, several of you wrote some version of nothing. There is nothing I would change. With one person noting, let's focus on implementing it, not wordsmithing it. This is the big challenge for First Parish. And another stating, it's important to keep some things constant. It's comforting. It's exhausting to question every word and debate each other about everything. One of you wrote, I would add, take care of each other and our planet. Another person said they would add love, as in bring love to the world, or love with kindness, work for justice. Someone else said, the notions of humility and mutual respect are missing. Another person wished there was, quote, a reference to the gathered community we are leaving. Someone else said, what is missing is any mention of love. I far and away prefer the sentiment in L. Griswold Williams' Covenant, which begins with, love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. For me, I agree that love and or spirituality are missing. For something that is so central to First Parish, I desperately want there to be something that talks about love being central to how we engage with one another, or something that talks about the spirit of life. The First Parish benediction strips out that line from the Presbyterian Book of Common Worship that reads, love and serve the Lord, rejoicing in the power of the Holy Spirit. The original Thessalonians said, pray without ceasing. I don't know what the right version for First Parish might be. Love each other, sing with the spirit of life, I don't know. But something is missing for me that involves love and spirit. If the benediction is at the heart of First Parish, I want First Parish's heart to be part of the benediction. Let's look at the benediction and then some possible alternatives to help us get a sense of what could be. Here's where I want the slide now, please. We'll start with the benediction in its current form. There it is. Go out into the world in peace, have courage, hold on to what is good, return to no person evil for evil, strengthen the faint-hearted, support the weak, help the suffering, honor all beings. That's the one we know and love. It's strong, it's meaningful, it resonates. Let's look at another version with some small modifications. Go out into the world in peace, have courage, hold on to what is good, return to no person evil for evil, help those in need, honor the earth and all its beings, love each other with kindness and compassion. This version addresses some of the language concerns that have been raised and adds at least a little bit of love and spirit. For me, it doesn't really change the outward focus, though, nor the tenor and tone. The whole thing still feels a little imperial to me. So here's a different version, a version reimagined with nods to the original, hopefully speaking to many of the original's concerns. A version created using a mix of the words you suggested, plus a few of my own. It reads, open your heart to a world in need of healing. Seek and treasure all that is goodness and grace. Ask for help when you encounter difficulty. Take care of each other and our planet. Love with kindness and fierce compassion. Help those in need. Tend to your spirit. Feel the warmth of this community as it sustains you. I'm going to ask you to say these words with me now, just to see how it feels. Open your heart to a world in need of healing. Seek and treasure all that is goodness and grace. Ask for help when you encounter difficulty. Take care of each other and our planet. Love with kindness and fierce compassion. Help those in need. Tend to your spirit. Feel the warmth of this community as it sustains you. Those words feel different to me. For me, they're softer, more gentle. They have a different orientation. They speak to both without and within. There is humility and mutual respect. There is love and spirit and community. And that's just one example. I also love the Sekeli or Hazi Aldash, and I'm sorry I mispronounced that, but it's the prayer our partner church in Transylvania sings regularly. Where there is faith, there is love. Where there is love, there is peace. Where there is peace, there is blessing. Where there is blessing, there is God. Where there is God, there is no need. If we were to say that at the end of every service each Sunday, that has a very different feel, a very different vibe, a very different focus. My question for you all this morning, after all this reflection, is, does the benediction as it stands meet your needs? As something that is central in the life of the congregation, does it lift up all that needs to be lifted up? As the most consistent thing that a newcomer will hear when they start attending Sunday services, does it represent First Parish well? Is the benediction as it currently stands ready to help First Parish move boldly into the future in these uncertain times? You can probably guess some of my answers to these questions after hearing what I've had to say. But it's not my answers that are the most important. It's your answers. If I were your settled minister, I would want us to have a conversation together about whether we should consider changing the benediction. I would want to have that conversation, not because I didn't understand how central and important the benediction is to First Parish, to you, but precisely because of how central and important the benediction is to this community. Nothing will ever be perfect or fulfill everyone's expectations. But if something is going to be so central in the life of the church, I don't want there to be part of it that is off-putting to some folks. And I do want it to have a reference to love or spirit or something deeper. I do want the tone, tenor, and orientation of the words to be more gentle, more humble, and more mutually respectful. But I am not your settled minister, and your settled minister, when they arrive, may feel differently than me. So, as is appropriate for a time of interim ministry, I'll leave it up to you if you want to start a conversation about potentially changing the benediction, or adding another benediction so there are two in rotation, or some other adjustment. If you want to have the conversation, let me know. If you don't want to have the conversation, that's fine too. Sometimes we do deep reflection and we decide we're content with the way things are. Part of the job of an interim minister is to come in with fresh eyes and reflect back to you what we see. It is up to you to choose what, if anything, you want to do with what I have reflected back to you. And in the bigger picture, I'm asking you to continue our long-held Unitarian Universalist tradition of self-reflection. We are a denomination, a faith tradition built upon willingness to continually question and assess our beliefs and practices. This is true on an individual level and on the institutional. Individually, we must remember to hold loosely to our truths and tightly to our questions so that we don't become too rigid on our spiritual journey of growth, discovery, and learning. Likewise, as you consider how to be a congregation and a religious community in this still evolving pandemic world, I hope you remain open to change while holding on to what is essential. Our willingness to grow, adapt, and evolve, to reimagine, is not only one of Unitarian Universalists' biggest strengths, it is also one of our biggest values. I'll leave you with these words of reimagination. Open your heart to a world in need of healing. Seek and treasure all that is goodness and grace. Ask for help when you encounter difficulty. Take care of each other and our planet. Love with kindness and fierce compassion. Help those in need. Tend to your spirit. Feel the warmth of this community as it sustains you. Amen. This is a prayerful section of the service where people can share joys and sorrows. our parish concerns and calling of names. Ruth Webster, mother of Jane Barnes and mother-in-law of Jay Barnes, passed away peacefully at home last Sunday, December 3rd. She was surrounded by her 4 children who had spent the week before sitting by her bedside. Ruth was 94 years old. We hold Jane and Jay and their family in our thoughts and prayers. John Spang, husband of Kathy, is recuperating at home from knee replacement surgery. He'll be unable to drive for several more weeks, and I would appreciate notes to cheer him on with his recovery. Helena Rimarovich, beloved mother of the Bozina Smith, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, and mother-in-law of Earl Smith, passed away peacefully at Rivercrest on Saturday, December 9th at the age of 102 after a short illness. She will be greatly missed. We send our love and care to the entire family. Is there anyone else on your heart and in your mind right now? If so, I invite you to call their names aloud or type them into the chat now.
All the people of Ukraine and Gaza.
There are also often things which are difficult sometimes to name out loud. We pause for another moment of silence for all that remains unspoken on our heart. Please join me now in prayer, which this morning is written by Lynn Cox. She wrote, "Spirit of life, ever adapting and renewing, we come together this morning with yearnings that do not match. We yearn for stability, for even one moment of feeling like we know what is going on, for the ability to predict and prepare for what is coming next. Yet we also yearn for change. We ache for a world that turns aside from racism, violence, dehumanization, and disregard for suffering. We pray for a change in the illness, grief, isolation, incarceration, and vulnerability of our loved ones. We reach for connections that will remind us that we are worthy as we are, and we reach for connections that will help us to become our best selves. Hold us in the heart of both and. Cradle us in the mystery. Cherish us in the eternal presence of love, and encourage us on the path of growth and development. As individuals and as people, help us to become who we are called to be. Lead us to open pathways to deeper wisdom through reconciliation, self-respect and mutual respect, compassion, owning and making amends for our mistakes. Source of wonder, move us to express and live in gratitude for the beauty of this world, the loving people in our lives, in this day of possibility. To this we add the meditations of our hearts as we enter into a time of silence.
I am the calm in the eye of the storm, come to center. I am the calm in the eye of the storm, take a breath. I am the calm in the eye of the storm, come to center. I am the calm in the eye of the storm. You can rest.
Friends, we have been on a 4-week/month-long journey of reflecting on and exploring our benediction. It is important work. It is the work of our religious tradition to reflect, assess, and see if we still believe what we have said to be true remains true. Whether it is the benediction, our personal beliefs, or how we function in this world as a congregation, let us carry on that tradition of self-reflection as we work on making the world and our lives a better place. Let's rise and body our spirit as we join in singing verses 1 and 4 of number 225, O Come, Emmanuel. Let us join now in saying our benediction. Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings. Go and be blessed and be a blessing. Amen.